I'm Kelsey Zeiser. We're here at the Fiber Connect event in Nashville, and I am joined by the wonderful Jaimie Lenderman from Omdia. Good to see you.
Hi, Kelsey. Good to see you, too.
Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Have you been surviving the heat? It's like oppressive humidity out there.
I'm staying in the fishbowl is my mantra.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's too hot
The
outside.
atrium biodome we have here at the Gaylord.
Air-conditioned Delta. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. Well, would love to hear from you about a recent report that you did with Julie, also from Omdia, about 1 gig services.
Right.
So, what's the difference in the number of global wireline operators that are offering 1 gig or greater broadband services now versus, say, 2019?
Yeah, so we've sort of done this informal survey over the years, and this last year, when we did it in early 2022, around 60% of the global operators that we surveyed offer 1 gig broadband, fixed wireline broadband. That's compared to 45% in 2019. So that's a significant uptick. And I think, that the pandemic was a huge driver in that, but I think there's other things also happening that are contributing.
And then what are some of the report touched on some of the drivers behind that growth? Can you give us kind of an overview of that?
Sure. Some of the things, one of the main things is definitely consumer demand, spurred by the pandemic and lockdowns, but also driven by continued work from home and school from home. And then in addition, the rise of online gaming. I think, especially in like Asia and North America, we're seeing certain markets really drive up that bandwidth consumption due to live streaming, gaming, and then additional e-health type things that are also driving that bandwidth consumption.
Yeah, all those Fortnite fans and whenever they have a new release, I'm sure it just blows it out of the water.
Or Twitch or all those.
Right.
Yeah. I'm not cool enough for that.
I'm not hip to it either. I don't even think hip is like the right thing to say.
I don't know. I wouldn't know.
What are some other things that have caused a shift in consumer demand? Anything else?
So one thing especially is we're seeing operator technology upgrades. So the capacity of the operator plant has expanded dramatically with 10 gig PON. It's creating a lot more opportunity for operators to increase, service offerings as well. So that's sort of in tandem with consumer demand. These are the answers that broadband providers are giving. Another thing in particular is the rise in continued investment from not just, public institutions, but also from private equity and investment funds. That is a big driver we're seeing in several markets across the globe around closing the digital divide. It's not just going to drive gigabit services at this time, but it's going to help with that last mile build, and that's what's going to enable gigabit service in the future.
And it also sounded like in the report that consumers are seeing all these advertisements for 1 gig services, and even if they're not, maybe they don't need that much capacity, but they're like, I saw it, I want that, I want the best.
Right, it's consumer perception. I want that, and I think you should offer it. And if a competitor comes along offering gigabit symmetrical service, it's definitely perceived as being a superior offering.
So with that competition, how big of a factor is service provider competition and driving demand for 1 gig services?
It's a huge factor. I think especially in the United States, perfect example is seeing several major fiber operators moving into some cities, and the incumbents had to react in order to stay competitive. So it's definitely continuing to drive those service offerings up and up, but not just service offerings, but also the types of services they're offering. And so in particular, I think we're seeing a huge rise in low latency gaming packages, which cater towards, the cool folks that we were talking about with their gaming packages as well as live streaming. And then another service that we're seeing is enterprise-like service for work from home. And so being able to guarantee some form of an SLA or, guaranteed bandwidth, sustained bandwidth to work from home is becoming more prevalent.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And then avoid those employees that are like, "Oh, your Zoom's breaking up." I
Yeah,
can't."
exactly.
They don't
So
have
make
that
you feel like
excuse
you have a real at-home office.
Right. You were also moderating a really interesting panel this week.
Yeah.
With, I think the company was Tavistock, a real estate developer
Yes.
in Florida. That it sounds like they're building their own fiber network. Essentially, can you tell us about that?
Yeah, what's so interesting about that is so the development was called Sunbridge, and it's a multi-hundred, multi-use housing development. And through being able to offer fiber service, there is no competitors, and they sign a deal, and that is your provider, like, period. And so there's 0% churn. There's a really good business case for it, but at the same time, it's of this value add to these new homes and the new buyers who are moving into here to have that dedicated high-speed service. Now, it's 1 gig offerings today, but because they built an XGS PON network, in the future, you're able to turn up faster speeds really easily.
Yeah.
And I think it's all through their HOA as well, which is really interesting. So you don't have your extra broadband bill every month. You just, when you pay your HOA dues.
An actually useful HOA example. Because some of them, I know a lot of people grumble about those HOA costs. So I think I wouldn't mind as much if I knew it was going to fiber.
To a premium broadband service.
Yeah, that's a great pull for potential home buyers. Of you don't have to go through the hassle of doing your own internet install or figuring out which provider. I guess on the flip side, you're kind of locked in to what they're providing, but
when you're on an all fiber network, it's you'd hope that it's a little bit superior service as well. I think that's the other thing that's helping enable rural builds is the opportunity to be able to have a broadband provider that's local. I think it could be a really big draw to those places that are expanding sort of out of the metro areas now.
Yeah. Were there any, challenges that they faced in doing that install? I think he was talking about the speaker about knowing the outside plant versus the inside plant, and then working with Adtran on XGS PON.
Right. I think, the upfront CapEx, like that's of course always going to be the one thing that everyone struggles with, right? Because it's getting those funds together. But I think with building in greenfield, there can be challenges when utilizing other entities that also need the ground, such as power. But there was no public easement, so it made it a lot easier to control the subdivision with fiber rollouts that way.
Probably a lot easier to install as you're building out this development. There's no one there, you're not disrupting current residents.
Right. Yeah, and it's a lot easier new builds, than say what we call brownfields with housing where it all has to be built. You just put it in the walls while you're building the walls, which is really nice.
Yeah, because we had some recent new fiber installs in our neighborhood, and some people it ended up, I guess they hit some water lines or something, some plumbing was affected. Luckily we were not.
Oh gosh,
but I felt bad for some of my neighbors. So yeah, that's nice when they can do it from the get-go.
Yeah, and you just walk in your door and you have fiber internet. So
yeah. You just
have to buy a house first.
Right, yeah, which in this market is it's difficult. Well, Jaimie, thanks so much for speaking with me.
Kelsey, yeah, it was great.
Appreciate it.